At 0742 local time on April 18, 2026, the VLCC Sanmar Herald, an Indian-flagged very large crude carrier, was 20 nautical miles northeast of Oman, transiting the Strait of Hormuz. On board, 2 million barrels of Iraqi crude. Market value, $200 million. Destination, Indian ports. The captain had requested and received prior clearance from Iranian naval authorities to pass. He was doing everything right. This would all change in a matter of seconds. Unknown to the Sanmar Herald's crew, 2 gunboats from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had launched from the Iranian coast. No radio warning, no hailing on VHF Channel 16, no flag signals. Just 2 boats with heavy machine guns, closing on a supertanker that Iran had cleared to transit 4 hours earlier.
Technical. Why this is different from every other IRGC engagement. Here is what the IRGC actually did. If you look at the hardware, the IRGC Fast Attack Boat is a 13-ton fiberglass patrol craft. Top speed 50 knots, armed with 12.7mm heavy machine guns, and sometimes short-range anti-ship missiles. These are the same boats Iran has used for decades to intimidate shipping in the Gulf. They are fast, they are deniable, and they are designed for exactly one mission: psychological pressure without crossing into full naval engagement. But here is what makes April 18th different from every previous IRGC engagement. Iran did not fire on one ship. Iran fired on at least 3. A British tanker, a container ship flying a European flag, the Indian supertanker Sanmar Herald carrying 2 million barrels of crude, and a second Indian-flagged vessel, in a single morning. Which means the flags of 4 separate nations were now on the receiving end of IRGC gunfire: the United Kingdom, France, and India twice. And there is one detail that makes this an escalation Iran cannot walk back. The Sanmar Herald had Iranian clearance. Iran had authorized that ship to pass, and Iran fired on it anyway. That is not intimidation. That is Iran's own naval command losing control of what IRGC units are doing on the water. Big mistake, what Iran just triggered.
And this is where Iran made its big mistake. Iran's calculation for weeks has been simple. If Iran fires on US-aligned ships, Washington responds alone. If Iran fires on Israeli-linked ships, the world stays quiet. But here is what Iran got wrong on April 18th. The UK does not care about US politics. France does not wait for Washington's lead. India does not tolerate attacks on its flagged vessels. Ever. And when Iran fires on all 3 in the same morning, Iran isn't just facing the US Navy anymore. Iran is facing an international maritime response. Within hours of the attacks, India summoned Iran's ambassador in New Delhi. Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri conveyed, in his own words, deep concern and urged Iran to resume at the earliest the process of facilitating India-bound ships across the strait. That is diplomatic language for do this again, and India's navy joins the blockade. The UK's Maritime Trade Operations Centre, the same office that coordinates Royal Navy escort missions in the Gulf, published real-time advisories warning all commercial traffic to avoid the strait entirely. France's government did not issue a public statement, but French-owned vessels began turning around at the strait's entry. The strait that had been partially open for 48 hours was now, effectively, closed to all non-Iranian commercial traffic.
And that is the moment the US president got involved. Trump's response: no more Mr. Nice Guy. Within hours of Iran firing on the British and French ships, President Trump posted publicly, naming both nations by name. President Donald Trump, Truth Social, April 19th, 2026. Iran decided to fire bullets yesterday in the Strait of Hormuz, a total violation of our ceasefire agreement. Many of them were aimed at a French ship and a freighter from the United Kingdom. That wasn't nice, was it? And then came the ultimatum that changes the entire shape of the war.
President Trump, same post, escalation statement. We're offering a very fair and reasonable deal, and I hope they take it, because if they don't, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran. No more Mr. Nice Guy. Understand the timeline here. The ceasefire expires on April 22nd. That is approximately 72 hours from those IRGC gunboats opening fire. Trump is publicly stating that if Iran does not accept the U.S. proposal in the Monday talks in Islamabad, the United States will strike Iran's civilian infrastructure, every power plant, every bridge, starting when the clock runs out. And 24 hours after Iran fired on those ships, the USS Spruance answered for all of them. The Iranian cargo ship Touska? Seized. Engine room destroyed. U.S. Marines boarding. First U.S. Navy kinetic action against an Iranian vessel in this entire war.
The big mistake that could end the war. Iran fired on a British ship and a French tanker, and an Indian supertanker, and a second Indian vessel, and a European container ship, all in a single morning. Iran thought it was sending a message. It was. But the message Iran actually sent was this. Iran's navy cannot control its own IRGC units. Iran's diplomatic position is collapsing on every front. The UK, France, India all turning against it simultaneously. And Iran has given the United States Navy the justification it needed for direct kinetic engagement. 72 hours. Islamabad talks Monday. Vance, Witkoff, Kushner at the table. And Trump's countdown to power plants and bridges running down in real time. This is the big mistake that could end the war.
One way or the other. Subscribe now. The next video drops the moment Monday's talks produce a result.